I never thought I'd be the guy writing all this out, but here I am. My name's Mike, and I've been with my wife, Lisa, for about 8 years. At first, it was perfect, easy, smooth, no drama. We met in college, got married right after, and honestly, I thought we were the kind of couple that would grow old together, sitting on a porch somewhere, arguing about whose turn it was to take out the trash. But that's not how it all played out. Things started to change maybe a year ago. Lisa became more irritable, snippy at little things, and started keeping her phone glued to her hand. She dismissed my questions with a shrug, say I was just being paranoid. I brushed it off, blaming myself. Maybe I was overthinking it, maybe I was just insecure. But deep down, I knew something was off. She'd go out with her friends more often, come home late, and always made up some excuse about work or a girls' night. But the vibe was different. There was this edge to her, a kind of defensiveness I'd never seen before. I also noticed her phone would buzz constantly when she thought I wasn't looking. She'd quickly swipe away messages, hide her screen. I'd catch her glancing nervously sometimes, or she'd get this weird smirk on her face when she thought I wasn't paying attention. Still, I didn't want to believe it was anything serious. Maybe she was just talking to a coworker or some new friend. I kept telling myself that, because confronting her about it felt like opening a can of worms I wasn't ready to deal with. But then came the night I stumbled on it all. I was looking for something in her purse, completely unintentionally, I swear, and I found her phone. Usually I'd leave her alone about it, but something made me glance at her messages. I saw a string of texts between her and someone named Jack. At first I thought maybe it was just a friend or a coworker, but then I saw what they were talking about. The way they exchanged flirty jokes, the suggestive comments, the way she called him babe when she thought I wasn't looking. My stomach sank. I couldn't believe what I was reading. I kept scrolling. The messages weren't just friendly, you could tell they'd been having sex too. I found pictures on her phone, nothing explicit but close enough. Her in her lingerie, the messages about meeting up, about how much she loved how hot Jack made her feel. All this while she was pretending to be this perfect wife, the one who cooked dinner every night, the one who always said she loved me. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. How could she do this to me, to us? I didn't wake her up that night. How could I? I was numb. I just sat in the dark, holding her phone and trying to process what I'd just seen. My mind was racing with questions. Why? How long? Was I just some fool who never noticed? I was furious, heartbroken, feeling betrayed on a level I didn't think was possible. I'd always believed in honesty, in loyalty. And here she was, hiding this affair behind my back with her so-called divorce mediator, no less. That was the kicker, someone who was supposed to help us split amicably, not screw around with my wife behind my back. The next morning I confronted her. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I showed her the messages, the photos, everything I found. She looked stunned for a moment, then got this nasty smirk, like she thought I was overreacting or making a big deal out of nothing. She told me I was just insecure, paranoid, that Jack was just a friend, that I was imagining things. She said I was crazy for jumping to conclusions, but I knew better. I could see the truth in her eyes, the guilt, the shame. She was lying through her teeth, and it made me feel sick. That's when I realized she'd been lying from the start. All those nights she claimed she was working late, the excuse about a business trip, the way she always avoided my questions. I felt like a fool for not seeing it sooner. My trust was shattered and I was furious. How could she betray me like this? How could she lie and cheat and then turn around and act like I was the problem? I was drowning in a storm of emotions, anger, sadness, betrayal, confusion. I felt like I was losing my mind. This was just the beginning. I had no idea what I was going to do next, but I knew that my life had changed forever. After I confronted her that morning, Lisa's reaction was nothing I expected. She threw a fit, slammed her fists on the table, and started screaming about how I was just controlling and jealous. Said Jack was just a friend, that I was overreacting because I was insecure. She kept calling me crazy, saying I was imagining things, that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. Honestly, it was like talking to a wall. Every word she spat out just made me angrier and more hurt. She told me I had no right to accuse her of anything, that I was just some obsessive spouse who couldn't handle her having a life outside of me. Her voice was sharp, bitchy, full of venom. I felt like I was losing my mind, trying to keep my cool, but inside I was boiling. I knew she was lying, knew she was still hiding something, but she kept pushing me to doubt myself. I kept asking her for the truth, for her to just be honest, but she kept twisting everything around, turning the tables on me. I remember standing there, watching her act like I was the crazy one, and I just felt this overwhelming wave of despair. How did I get here? How did the woman I loved turn into someone so cold, so manipulative? It's like I was fighting a ghost. I wanted to believe her, wanted to believe it was all just a mistake, a misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew I'd uncovered the truth. She'd been lying, cheating, and sneaking around behind my back with Jack. I decided I wasn't going to just accept this. I had to know everything. I started digging, asking around, trying to find out more about Jack. Turns out, Jack was her divorce mediator, supposed to be helping us split amicably like some kind of neutral third party. Instead, he was the one she was cheating with. That realization hit me like a punch in the stomach. The very person who was supposed to facilitate our breakup was the one she was sneaking around with during the process. That's some sick twist. Over the next few days, I became obsessed with catching her in the act. I watched her closely, noticed her phone was constantly buzzing, and every time she left the room, I'd check her messages. I found even more. Proof: texts exchanged late at night, flirty emojis. Can't wait to see you, miss you already. The worst part was knowing she'd been lying to my face all this time. She kept saying she loved me, that she was faithful, that she was just stressed and overwhelmed, and that I was paranoid. But I wasn't stupid. I knew better now. One night, I decided I had to see Jack for myself. I didn't want to just rely on texts. I wanted to confront him, get some answers. I found out where he lived, just a few miles away, and I drove over there, my stomach twisted in knots. I didn't plan to do anything crazy, just wanted to see if he was really involved. I knocked on his door, and for a moment I thought about just barging in, but I kept my cool and asked to speak with him. When he opened the door, I saw the surprise in his eyes, and then the guilt. I told him straight up that I knew what was going on, that my wife was cheating on me with him, and I wanted the truth. What Jack said next floored me. Instead of denying it outright, he hesitated, then admitted they'd been seeing each other for months, that they'd been secretly meeting. Said it was just sex, that he didn't want to hurt me, but that he couldn't help how he felt about Lisa. That was like a punch to the gut. The fact that the person I trusted to help us split was the one screwing my wife behind my back. I was furious, but also devastated. I wanted to punch something, scream, break something, but I just stood there trying to process the betrayal from both of them. Driving back home, I couldn't think straight. My mind kept circling around the image of her and Jack together, laughing, touching, whispering secrets. The woman I'd loved, the woman I'd promised to spend my life with, was out there cheating on me with the guy who was supposed to help us get through our divorce without destroying each other. It felt like my whole world was collapsing. I kept asking myself, how could she do this? How could she betray me so openly, so shamelessly? I thought I knew her, thought I knew what she was capable of, but everything was a lie. That night I couldn't sleep. I felt sick. I felt betrayed on a level I never even knew existed. I'd always been the guy who believed in honesty, who thought love was about trust. Turns out I was an idiot. All those years I'd been blind to her lies, blind to her bitchy attitude, blind to the fact that she was capable of cheating on me with the very mediator we hired to help us separate. The realization hit hard. I was someone she used, someone she manipulated, while she was out there screwing around with Jack. That's when I knew I had to make a decision about my future. But first, I had to survive this storm of betrayal. The days that followed were a blur of anger, confusion, and a strange sense of numbness. I couldn't focus on anything properly. Every time I saw her, Lisa would throw these icy glances at me, like I was the villain in her story. She kept trying to spin her lies, telling me I was overreacting, that Jack was just a friend, that I was jealous and insecure. But I wasn't buying what she was selling anymore. I'd seen too much, heard too many lies, and I knew the truth. She had been lying to my face from the start. What really pushed me over the edge was how she turned the tables and started accusing me of being the bad guy. She told everyone, friends, family, even some of her coworkers, that I was possessive and controlling, that I wasn't handling the impending divorce well. That's when I realized she was trying to make herself look as innocent as possible, painting me as the crazy husband who couldn't get over losing her. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I knew she was spinning a web of bullshit and I had to do something about it. I started planning my next move. I needed leverage, proof, something that would hit her where it hurt. I knew I couldn't just confront her again without solid evidence. So I dug through her emails, her social media, anything I could find. I found a few more messages between her and Jack, more explicit and revealing than before. I also managed to get a hold of her phone when she wasn't looking, and I found even more proof of their affair. It was clear they'd been intimate, not just emotionally but physically too. I felt my blood boil every time I thought about how she'd been lying to my face all along, playing the perfect wife while screwing the mediator on the side. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act, acting all hurt and betrayed that I couldn't trust her. She'd cry, say she was sorry, that she'd made a mistake, that she still loved me. But it was all just theater. I knew better now. I'd seen her true colors and they weren't pretty. I started to realize that trying to fix this marriage was pointless. She had already made her choice and it wasn't me. Still, part of me wondered if there was a way to salvage what was left, or if I should just cut my losses and move on. One night, I decided I needed answers from Jack himself. I didn't want to just intimidate him or confront him blindly. I wanted to know exactly what I was dealing with. I found out where he worked and I set up a meeting. When I saw him, I saw the guilt in his eyes. He knew he'd betrayed me, betrayed my trust. I didn't waste time with small talk. I told him I knew about the affair, that I had proof, and that I was furious. I asked him why he did it, how he could betray not just me but the whole reason they were involved, helping us get divorced. Jack hesitated at first, then finally admitted that he and Lisa had been sleeping together for months, said it was just sex, that he didn't mean to ruin everything, that he got caught up in the thrill. He looked ashamed, genuinely regretful, but I didn't buy it. I told him that he'd destroyed my marriage, broken the trust I had in Lisa, and that I wasn't going to let that slide. I told him I wanted him out of my life, that I didn't want to see him again, and if I ever caught him near Lisa again, I'd make sure he regretted it. Driving home that night, the realization hit me harder than ever. My marriage was over. Not because she'd cheated, but because she'd lied and betrayed everything we had. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I loved, gone, replaced by a stranger who knew how to lie and cheat without batting an eye. I felt the sting of betrayal like 1,000 needles, but underneath that there was a strange sense of relief. I finally knew the truth. I was no longer in the dark, and honestly, part of me felt ready to move on. For the first time in a long while, I thought about what I wanted to do next. Do I fight to save this marriage? Do I let her go and start over? Do I expose everything publicly? There was a lot to consider, but one thing was clear. I couldn't keep living in this limbo. The trust was shattered and the pain was deep. I decided I was done pretending everything was okay. I needed to take control of my life, even if that meant going through hell first. In the days that followed, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. Every time I saw Lisa, it was like I was seeing her for the first time. This cold, manipulative woman who had lied to me for so long. She kept trying to spin her web of excuses, calling me jealous, saying she was under pressure, claiming Jack was just a mistake. But I knew better now. The truth was out and there was no way back to the way things used to be. I decided I couldn't stay in the house anymore. Not with her acting like I was the bad guy, accusing me of being insecure just because I found out the truth. I packed a bag, told her I needed space, and moved in with a friend for a while. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Sitting there, knowing she'd been lying right to my face, I felt shattered. All those years of trust broken in a matter of weeks. While I was staying away, I started plotting my next move. I couldn't just walk away from this without making her pay at least a little. I wanted her to feel what I felt: betrayed, humiliated, furious. So I gathered all my evidence, screenshots of her texts, copies of emails, even a few audio recordings I managed to make when she wasn't paying attention. I knew the moment I dropped all that on her, it would hit hard. One afternoon, I confronted her again. I told her I had everything. She looked panicked, trying to deny it all, but I laid out the proof piece by piece. Her face went pale when she saw the screenshots, the messages, the photos. She finally broke down and admitted everything. How she'd been cheating on me with Jack, how she'd been lying for months, and how she convinced herself that she was doing the right thing by sneaking around. That's when I realized how deeply she'd lied to herself, convinced she was justified in betraying me. I told her I was done. Done with her lies, her manipulations, her bitchy attitude. I told her I didn't want her anymore, that I was filing for divorce. Her reaction was actually worse than I expected. Instead of breaking down or begging, she got angry, called me names, accused me of being a terrible husband who couldn't satisfy her, said I was controlling, jealous, possessive, all the usual bullshit she'd been throwing around before. Honestly, at that point, I was so numb to her words I just tuned her out. The divorce process started soon after. I hired a lawyer, and I made it clear I wanted full custody of the kids. I didn't trust her to be a responsible parent, especially not after finding out how she'd been sneaking around behind our backs. It was a brutal, messy process, filled with accusations, legal threats, and a lot of late-night thinking about everything I'd lost. But I also felt a strange sense of liberation. For the first time in a long time, I was taking control of my life. Throughout it all, Lisa kept trying to manipulate me to play the victim. She'd cry, send me long messages about how she regretted everything, how she still loved me. But I wasn't buying it anymore. Her tears were just tactics. She wanted to keep the door open, to keep me second-guessing myself. I knew her well enough now to see through her act. She'd lied so much that I could practically see right through her. One thing I did realize, though, was that I'd been naive for so long. I always believed in the best in people, in love, in honesty. But betrayal like this changes you. It's humbling, painful, but also a lesson. Trust isn't given easily anymore. I learned that sometimes people you love can betray you in the worst ways, and there's no coming back from it. I was mad at her, hurt beyond words, but eventually I started focusing on myself, rebuilding my life piece by piece. Looking back, I honestly don't know if there's any coming back from a betrayal this deep. You can forgive, but forgetting, that's another story. I used to think marriage was forever, until I found out what forever really meant. Now, I'm just trying to put the pieces back together. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I won't let her or Jack or anyone else ruin me like this again. I just hope anyone reading this who's going through the same thing understands. Trust your gut and don't ignore the signs. Because once the betrayal hits, everything changes. The divorce finally went through after months of back and forth. It was ugly, messy, and exhausting, but I felt like I was finally starting to breathe again. The hardest part wasn't even the legal process. It was dealing with her constant attempts to manipulate the situation, to paint herself as the victim. She sent me endless texts crying about how sorry she was, how she still loved me, and how she wanted to try again. But I saw through every word. I knew her game, and I wasn't falling for it. One night, I sat down with my lawyer and looked over everything. The evidence I'd gathered, the messages, the photos. I knew I had enough to make sure Lisa couldn't wiggle her way out of this, and I made it clear I wanted full custody of the kids. I didn't trust her to be a responsible parent anymore, especially after all the lies and betrayal. It was a tough decision, but I knew it was the right one. My priority was protecting my kids from her manipulative ways, and honestly from her sheer bitchiness. That woman could be downright nasty when she didn't get her way. As part of the settlement, I also made sure Jack was off limits. I wanted nothing to do with him, no contact, no chance for him to worm his way into my life again. I knew his guilt was probably eating him up inside, and I hoped that eventually he'd realize how much damage he'd caused. I didn't want to waste my energy on revenge anymore. I just wanted to move on, to rebuild my life. But I'll admit, I still think about the way she lied, the way she betrayed everything we built. In the aftermath, I started focusing on myself. I threw myself into work, reconnected with friends I'd neglected, and even picked up some hobbies I'd always wanted to try, like hiking and photography. The pain didn't disappear overnight, but each day got a little easier. I learned not to dwell on the past, but to look forward and rebuild what was broken. The hardest lesson was trusting again, but I promised myself that I wouldn't let one betrayal define me. One thing I realized through all this: the biggest mistake I made was ignoring the early signs. I kept telling myself she was stressed, that she was just going through a rough patch. But deep down, I knew she was hiding something. If I'd paid closer attention, maybe I could have caught her before she completely tore us apart. Now, I tell anyone listening, trust your instincts. Don't ignore the red flags, no matter how small they seem, because in the end, that gut feeling might save you from a lot of heartbreak. Looking back, I don't regret confronting her, even though it hurt like hell. It was almost like a necessary pain, waking me up from the dream I've been living in. I wish her no ill will, but I do hope she gets whatever she deserves. For me, this whole experience has been a brutal lesson in trust, betrayal, and resilience. I'm rebuilding my life now, slowly but surely, and I know that someday I'll find happiness again. Maybe not with her, maybe not ever, but I will find it. And honestly, if I could give any advice to someone in my shoes, it's this: don't ignore the signs. Be honest with yourself. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Protect yourself, your kids, and your sanity. Because once trust is broken, it's damn hard to put back together. But it's not impossible. You just have to be willing to face the truth, no matter how ugly it gets. That's how you finally start to heal. Now, as I sit here reflecting on everything that's happened, I realize how much I've changed. The pain, the betrayal, it all reshaped me in ways I never expected. I'm not the same naive guy who believed in forever and fairy tale endings. I'm more cautious now, more careful about who I trust, and definitely more aware of the signs I once ignored. One thing I've learned is that betrayal isn't just about the other person cheating. It's about losing faith in someone you once loved and trusted with all your heart. It's about feeling stupid for not seeing the clues earlier, for being blind to the little signs that everything was falling apart. But I also learned that sometimes you have to hit rock bottom before you can start climbing back up. You have to face the darkness, confront your pain, and then decide to move forward. For anyone else going through something similar, I want to say this: don't let betrayal define you. It's a chapter, not the whole story. It hurts like hell, but you can come out of it stronger. Find your support system: friends, family, someone who can listen and help you heal. Don't blame yourself. Trust me, I spent nights crying and wondering what I did wrong, but the truth is, she chose to betray us, not the other way around. Most importantly, learn to forgive, not necessarily her, but yourself. Forgive yourself for trusting too easily, for ignoring the signs, for still loving someone who didn't deserve it. Forgiveness isn't about excusing what happened. It's about freeing yourself from the chains of bitterness and pain. It's about accepting that sometimes life throws you curveballs, and all you can do is catch them and keep moving forward. Looking ahead, I know I still have a long road to recovery. There will be days when I feel the sting all over again, days when I question whether I'll ever truly trust someone again. But I also know I'll be okay, because I've learned that my worth isn't defined by her lies or her betrayal. It's in how I pick myself up, how I rebuild, how I choose to move on. So if you're reading this and you're in the middle of your own betrayal, just remember, it's okay to be hurt. It's okay to feel angry, betrayed, lost. But don't let those feelings consume you. Stand tall, face the truth, and start the long process of healing. Trust takes years to build and seconds to destroy, but rebuilding it is possible, even after the worst betrayal. I don't know what my future holds now. Maybe I'll find someone else someday. Or maybe I'll just focus on being the best dad I can be and living my life on my own terms. Either way, I'm done looking back. This story, our story, ended the day I found out the truth. Now I'm just trying to live honestly, to love myself again, and to never let someone betray me like that again. Life's too short for that kind of pain.